Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Alignment Recess Live. I am Tiffany Lauren Jones, and this space is for the conversations that meet you at the threshold of who you were and who you're becoming. Today's guest is someone who walks with the unseen, speaks the soul's language, and helps healers remember why they came here. I'm joined by Namuli, a soul purpose guide and multidimensional healer whose work weaves sensual awakening, soul journeying, and womb wisdom into a path of remembrance. She's here to talk about what it really means to heal across lifetimes, reclaim purpose encoded in the body, and walk the path of a spiritual healer with clarity, protection, and embodiment. So, if you've been waking up to your gifts or feeling overwhelmed by the intensity of your remembrance or wondering how to show up in this work without burning out, then this episode is for you. Welcome to Muli. How are you?
I'm well. I'm happy to be here.
Likewise, so happy to have you. I always introduce my guests, but I love for you to introduce yourself and share a bit about how you came to this point in life. Give us a little bit of your backstory.
Yes. So I'll just start with my background and kind of my upbringing. I grew up super religious, Southern Christian, Baptist, AME churches. For me to be where I am now is a miracle. And I've been on my deconstruction of Christianity journey for a while now. And a lot of things have transpired. So with that, I've come out as a lesbian woman. I'm remarried to a woman after being in a heterosexual marriage in relationship for 16 years. I do have a child who's autistic. I just was diagnosed with autism yesterday. We were just talking about that. And so a lot of these pieces are weaved into this self acceptance that just took a lot of disillusion and crumbling for me to be in this space. So I first started awakening, I would say, when I got pregnant with my son. He's 11 now. So that was like 11, 12 ish years ago. And after a while, dreams have always been a thing for me. And my dreams have always been dismissed as either demonic or there was no in between. It was either if it's imagination or it was demonic. I was never able to embrace my sexuality, my gifts. I didn't have anyone to go to. And now, eventually, spirit started waking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning for 8 months straight in 2018, showing me that I was going to be a healer. Reiki was that first thing I saw that fit the visions that I was seeing. And I've been doing this for 7 years now. And, and my gifts are very shamanic in nature. And I've dealt with postpartum depression, coming out, neurodivergent journey. I work with women to empower their wombs, their heart spaces, their sensuality, their sexuality, and stepping into their purpose as emergent healers and living their life of purpose and meaning that they're meant to in this lifetime. And I do that through shamanic journey work.
A whole, I feel, multiple lifetimes of experiences. For those of you watching and listening, we met in undergrad. We both went to the same art school. So we were discussing before we started the live. I've seen her go through all of the transformations. So to see you from college time to now, from your marriage to having a child, becoming a mother, to now going through this whole spiritual awakening, it's been really fascinating and beautiful to see you blossoming into who you really are and going through your unraveling because it really takes, and I want to emphasize, it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage and resilience and all the words to actually do that, especially when you come from something like a super religious background. Or I know we're both from Virginia. I know that's where we met. Yeah, that Virginia is pretty conservative. And so you don't see a lot of experiences here where people are really given the space to become who they really are in some ways. And so I just want to acknowledge that and acknowledge your journey. And then we met again in life, going through a transformation there. How did that impact your journey? How did understanding your human design and having a session to really help you on your journey of transformation, how did that impact you?
I definitely, like I said, I was saving up my tax money to come see you. I could not wait. I had known a little bit about astrology, human design before that, but I was also like, I don't wanna live by astrology. I don't want it to box me in. But at that was the same time I had just got a divorce. I came out and I was moving through even a heartbreak after that. So it was like lowest of the low, but that's the most potent space to be in. So I knew it's a great place for me to just really get clear on what's written in the stars for me already, how I'm wired, how I am designed. My months before I had that session with you, that's when my son was diagnosed with autism. And that's when his like assessment paperwork was a big slap in the face for me. So it was just that time of I know I've burned myself out in this work before. I know there's a different way I'm supposed to be going about this work. And now that I'm in this huge transition, I'm going to take this time to figure out and learn what that is for me, what my unique language of energy is for me and how I'm supposed to be showing up. I knew I was a manifester, and so are you. And so that like one of the reasons I definitely wanted to work with you because you had that personal experience in this energy. It was just so validating and it was a release. And it gave me so much clarity and direction on when, after I go through my healing, I took a step back from my work for a bit so I could focus on the transition. Really wanted to step back into this work with more intention, more alignment. And your session was the pivotal point that really anchored me into what that was for me and what that would look like.
Awesome. Thank you so much for trusting me with that journey. I was new in my experience, sharing that with other people, and it was really special to me that we were able to, in some ways, go on that journey together.
Yes, and it was beautiful.
Yeah. Excellent. So you talk about healing and not just in this lifetime, but across lifetimes. So what does that look in practice? We talk about healing, but what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, so when I first became a Reiki practitioner, I just didn't have any expectation. And I was just following and being obedient to spirit waking me up and telling me this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I just jumped into it, knowing what to expect. But then I realized that once you get Reiki attunements, it really opens up like the dormant channels and gifts that you have already laying within you. And these gifts we carry on and build through experience and wisdom through lifetimes, like, it follows us through lifetimes. So, it was a quite the experience when I first started working on people in person. I was journeying different worlds. I thought I was losing my mind. I had power animals and spirit animals around me. I could see fetuses and babies showing up, people's loved ones that have passed on, walking in the room with them, feeling their presence, and I had never worked with these things before. I had dreams, but I never had any guidance or knowledge on what all these other things meant or what I was even doing, and it was just happening to me naturally.
Yeah.
And it was scary because I wasn't prepared. I felt like in the trains that I got, they were pretty much cut and dry about Reiki. Here are the symbols. This is what Reiki is about without the important protection pieces, especially when you're traveling these astral realms and you want to be protected from interference and things like that, but connecting to healed ancestors and benevolent beings, but also being sovereign in your autonomy to be able to feel safe
Right.
through the traveling. So I was just wide open. I had to go through, like, a lot of my own headache and trial and errors to figure out how to properly approach this work. First, I'm a Reconnect native, so my lineage was erased by paper genocide. So navigating the ancestral work and just doing that through the astral realms. That's really what I'm doing, and sometimes I'll even go POV to my students' inner child and witness any abuse or anything like they were witnessing as a child. And so all of these things happened to me immediately. And honestly, I was scared of it. I just tried to keep it very watered down and ready, just like for a while. Until I could figure out what the heck was happening to me and what I was doing. So my sessions now, I fully embodied and embraced my gifts. And it's really just that astral traveling. They include past life regressions. We can just focus on anything that whatever my students are meeting that moment. It's really meeting you in different worlds. Your soul is guiding these journeys. I'm facilitating them. I'm connecting you to your spirit guides and your spirit team for any release, any things you need to see and remember from past lives. And so it's just the astral traveling, and it feels like a guided meditation. It feels like you're using your imagination, but imagination is not really what it seems. That's the gateway to traveling. But I do energy healing and sound healing during that too. And I do cord removal and pulling while you're on your journey session. And after, we go over symbolic symbols that came through your journey, and I take notes, and I'm able to give you a symbolic reading and interpretation from that, and an intuitive reading for anybody that have come through as far as ancestors or loved ones.
I'm getting goosebumps because I have gone through my own experiences in terms of what you're speaking about. I don't do the same type of energy and healing work that you do, but I did a lot of practices on myself during my healing journey and when my gifts were coming online. And as you said, there are moments where am I losing my mind? Because what are the experiences and learning to feel safe with your gifts and also how to first feel safe with your gifts to ground yourself, but then to understand, okay, how can I actually utilize these gifts to heal and to access information? And so to be doing that for other people is nothing light. It's very serious work. It's very heavy. And it takes someone who has the gift naturally, I believe, to be able to do it in a way that's not only ethical, but safe for you and for the person that you're doing the work on. And the only way to be able to do that is to go through it yourself, I believe. S Yes. There's really no other way to explain it. It's not something that you can teach. I think you can tool, but you have to go through it to really understand and know what it is, because there's not a lot of reference out here in terms of, okay, if you have spiritual gifts, what are they? How do you use them? If we're talking things like religion, the Bible references some spiritual gifts, but it's in a different context. You don't necessarily have the context of dreams per se, or some of the other experiences that you may have. And as you mentioned, seeking guidance at church may give you a different direction than what you're really experiencing. And so you really only have yourself in how we are right now. I think more people are coming online, if you will. More people are awakening and sharing their gifts and having these conversations. But especially in the Black and Brown community, I don't hear about it very often because
It's still taboo. And there's a lot of blocks there. And it's complex, it's layered. So with Christianity and growing up religious, for you to be gifted or to be acknowledged as gifted, you had to be acknowledged by a hierarchy, or somebody had to tell you that you were gifted, and you weren't really allowed to practice or dabble in those things unless a pastor or someone told you you're gifted and you're showing up in a certain way, right? Or that you had to be special or impressive. That kind of tone came along. That kind of reflected Jesus, not religious way. So when I first started coming into the work, people and I had to put boundaries because a lot of people were seeing me as Jesus and not as human. And I didn't feel well, I didn't want that attention like that. So that made triple. So that was something I had to navigate too. And then with the reconnecting natives and having reverence, I don't call myself a shaman because I haven't gone through that an initiation process that what is in this lifetime, how we are in our modern world. I You have to be invited and initiated in a very specific way to claim that title. So I don't claim that title, but I try to practice in integrity as ethical. I listen to my guides, to my well-heeled ancestor, and show up the way that I am guided to show up while still in reverence and not getting titles that are not rightfully mine to claim in this lifetime. And procreation, procreation, the huge block I see with my students too. I don't want to I permission. I don't feel like I'm safe to show up this way or that I'm allowed to show up a certain way. And that was a huge block for me too.
I definitely understand that, and I see it a lot as well. So how do you encourage what's your recommendation outside of course, having services done where you can tap into your energy for someone who maybe doesn't have access to that yet, or maybe they don't feel safe to work with someone yet. How can you start feeling safe in your own body? What would you say? What are some things that someone can do to start feeling safe to be seen? Because it's really there's I don't wanna say it's not safe, but there are a lot of things that make it make sense why you would not feel safe, especially with these topics because most people give you a look or they label you as all types of things, and our culture has not yet adjusted to the truth, I think, of who we are as human beings and the experiences we're having here. And for someone who's listening who maybe wants to start practicing at home with being safe, feeling seen, what would you say to them?
I would absolutely start with self-love, getting curious about who you actually are without looking outside yourself. I see a lot of my students really focusing on really consuming knowledge outside of themselves instead of that inner wisdom. That's the best way to not compare and stay in your own lane and start your journey by just getting really very curious about who you are and that self acceptance, that shadow work, that self love. That's going to keep you grounded and following your path because our path is very different from everybody's. That is number one. That's foundational. Just that self love piece, knowing yourself and starting with where you are on your journey and not trying to skip ahead and do advanced things before having that foundational piece because what is for one healer is not for the next healer. We're all wired differently, designed differently, meant to do different things, show up in our gifts differently. The other thing I would say is protection is very important. And I think a lot of stuff has become trendy and people get really excited about jumping on the bandwagon and it looks really cool and it's very aesthetic and it's very and so it's just like it can be escapism. And then you can jump into something that you don't know what you're doing. And you have to have that knowledge of protection in place. So I would say that anything that you study the most, study how to protect yourself because when you're getting curious, you want to feel safe in your body first. You have to feel safe in your body. This is not mindset work. This things don't happen up here. Like we've been taught a lot and programmed a lot to believe by our original indigenous cultures recognize our original third eye to be our womb. So it's in our body, it's not in our head. So even in a lot of esoteric and physical studies and literature, they over focus on this third eye, the pineal gland, which is there. That's real. But this is the first original portal of creation, of knowingness, of intuition, and connecting with that in your body, really grounded, connected to your ancestors. And you'll start remembering once you recognize the womb as the foundational and first step to the equation.
Right.
Um,
Oh my gosh, we could have 5 other episodes and conversations. So much that we don't know about our own wisdom that we inherit, but also that we're born with just as sovereign beings. We're so powerful. If we look at science as well, for all the naysayers that may be listening, if you're feeling like this may be woo for you, as people like to label it, which I've decided I worked with a whole coach about the word woo because I was so offended by it. And it was part of my block of being seen. And so she was like, reclaim it. I bring that up because I know some people listening may feel it can be uncomfortable when you first start learning and hearing if you have not been in spaces where it's been normalized. And so it can be overwhelming. It can come with a lot of things. So when you talk about the womb health or the womb wisdom, really, science reflects that too.
Absolutely.
Gut health is brain health, is what they say. And so everything that's happening in your gut feeling, your intuition, all of these things are happening in that space. So it makes sense. The information is there. I think it's been watered down and hidden and changed in forms that feel inaccessible to us sometimes. And really, it's already within you. It's something that you can tap into and utilize at any time. We didn't come with a manual, but we definitely are there's a whole system within us that we no one teaches us how to use.
And there is a blueprint and there's layers to that. And it's reflected in our past lives, in our ancestors, in our bodies, in this lifetime, in our birth charts, in our human design. So we have clues, right, that we can follow. But like you said, there is no manual. There's still no step-by-step guide. It doesn't make it any easier. We're still gonna go through the medicine wheel of life and walk the spiral of life.
Cannot bypass that. So true. So let's get into womb wisdom and sensual remembrance. What happens when a woman reconnects to her sensuality and not from performance? Because that is really how I think our society and culture has conditioned us to be as women. Our sexuality is for our partner or a man or entertainment and all these other things. But there's power in having it for yourself. And again, not for performance, but for remembrance. What happens when a woman reconnects with her sensuality?
I think a lot of it, what you were just touching on, has been on purpose to control us, to keep us disconnected from the wisdom of our bodies, especially for women. So when we reconnect to that, it can be scary. It can feel foreign, but we reactivate our creative power, our power of creation, because again, that is the original portal of creation. So when we decenter all those other things from it and we deconstruct all of those things, we get reconnected to our innate power, our original nature. And I think that's what I like to call the woo woo. It's really our nature because it's not even, I like to say, drop the super from natural because it is natural energy. These things are creative and sensual power is our original first language. It's our native tongue and it lives within our womb. Students come in and emergent healers come in trying to read all the books and learn all the psychology and the human labels and things like that. And so it's overly focused in the mind. And that's how we've been conditioned on purpose so that we could stay disconnected from the real wisdom that's been carried on in our bones and in wombs through the red thread. When we tap into that, a lot of women don't even look at themselves, or you might have to start just the surface level work of the circle of looking at your body, features, loving yourself in a physical way, getting familiar with your anatomy, self pleasure in a sacred way by yourself. And then going deeper and you can speak to the womb and start recognizing the voice of your womb. Everything that we've been told and projected onto people have told us who we are supposed to be, who have shamed us, judged us, belittled us, their voices live in our solar plexus, but it's always reflected into the river of worlds. And anything that breaks our hearts or that is not processed out of our hearts, it bleeds out. So the heart bleeds out into our wombs. If we're blocking that process, it just gets stuck in the womb as like an emotional debt for toxic prints from this lifetime and past lifetimes through the womb. So we're carrying a lot of stuff that's not ours, that are also ours. And so that creates a lot of distortion or static into the womb. But once we start doing that work, we can really open up. And that's when we're really tapping into our intuition, our creative power, when we are really wilding ourselves and we can really come into our own. And once you embody that, that becomes your foundation. You become unstoppable because then you're safe in your body and you can trust your intuition. The biggest thing is recognizing the voice of intuition, where your voice of anxiety, fears, and past voices of everybody else that you have adopted. And it's been so long that you might not even realize that it's not your own beliefs or voices. So my first step working with my students is getting into that root work and labeling, naming the voices and releasing that through the roots. And so it's a layered process, but once the wound work happens, things come to the surface that might be physical. It's that purging. Mental things may come up as a purge. So you really purge the wound first before you can tap into the true knowledge, remembrance. And once you do, you will start feeling not only the wounds of your ancestors, the gifts they had, the strength they had, your purpose, your remembrance, all of that, their protection really comes strong through the role. So yeah, it's not about performance at all. It's really about self-sovereignty and self-belonging and that self-love of reclaiming.
Right. Absolutely. And allowing yourself to go through the emotions that we haven't been able or we've told we should not be expressing, like rage or screaming, crying, all of these emotions that we've been taught as women we should suppress because we're supposed to be demure and show up and be polite and smile and be soft and all of these things. And yes, we have that aspect to us, but also rage is an emotion and anger and all of these things that if you don't get that out of your body, it absolutely lives there. The Body Keeps the Score is a book I always reference. I don't know anyone who's actually finished the book because it's so intense. But the point is, all of our experiences, as you said, it really does live in your body and it stores there. If you don't clear that out, it just, I feel, compounds and so many experiences are really rooted in things that are living in your body that maybe you don't really want there. So, can you more about your yoni mirror work or sensual activation practices? I'm familiar with mirror work in general and mirror work nude, but I haven't done yoni mirror work. So I'm curious to hear about that.
So that's just a branch off of what I do with my shamanic journeys. A lot of my work is based on this guidance and it feels like a guided meditation. So I just branch that out into, again, most women don't even look at themselves down there. And a lot of this sensual work is done through movement, not just focusing right on the anatomy, but the mirror work is just feeling safe in a space, feeling seen, feeling held. A lot of us, even neurodivergence especially, need that safe co-regulation where we need another nervous system. So my son is like that. And he always needed somebody to sleep with him next to him in the bed for a very long time. So understanding what that nervous system needs are for people and how important that co-regulation is makes a difference to have something that you trust and feel comfortable with in a space where you're being very vulnerable with yourself. And it's helpful to have a witness there, just being there with you and present and holding space. So getting to that space as a guide as women are looking at themselves in the mirror, their anatomy, but really guide them with the right energetic language, breath work, and setting the tone to make it safe for them to finally face themselves, look at themselves, and appreciate the beauty of it and just have that connection there. And it goes deeper than what they're seeing in the mirror, of course. But like when you do eye gazing in the mirror, it's just as vulnerable, if not more vulnerable, because there's so much energy that's living there. And there's so much avoidance that's there for a lot of women. Well, but it's breaking that barrier. I also am an artist. So I can do the guided journeys, and it's a sensual guided journey, and it's an energetic shamanic journey while I'm live painting your yoni. You can leave and go home with that, but that's a representation and it's really charged and it has all of the intentions and prayers and everything in it. And it's just something to be, you can refer back to and reconnect and feel that just keeps living on. It's like a living prayer in art that deepens that connection and that seeing the beauty in it beyond what society has made us feel about these things.
Right.
And then I do sensual movement meditation and I do workshops and events just because it's a lot moving your hips and your pelvis. And it's so complex and there's so many different ways we can approach this work. So I'd like to dive into that.
I love it. I feel every time I dance or I'm moving my hips or even sometimes naturally, if I'm on my yoga mat, if I had a stressful day or there's some emotion that's trying to come up, I literally may not even know that there's an emotion that's trying to come up through my body, but I'll naturally start moving my hips or swaying or moving in circles or something like that. And next thing I know, I'm crying. And it happened many times doing practices like yoga or hip opening stretches. And how I know that it's purging and not, I don't want to say an active feeling, but something that has been stored, if you will, is because I will not know where it's coming from.
And so many people get caught up on trying to pinpoint the narrative or label and identify. We want to just name everything and we don't have to. And that's why movement and energy healing sometimes works better, and a lot of times for neurodivergence, than talk therapy because we are felt sensual beings. We don't necessarily need to label it or get caught up on spiraling about it and ruminating on why is this coming up? Why do I feel this way? And just being in our senses as sensual beings. We don't need to name it. And that's what movement, especially sensual movement, does a lot. It helps just that releasing. And I always like to recommend if any of you have a hard time going into meditation and quieting the mind before meditation, shake your body or move first, because that's where all of this, everything in your body is just being reflected in your
Right.
mind is responding to what's going on in your body. So if you can just, how the birds have a natural instinct to shake their wings and stuff, that regulation practice, we have to do the same thing, but we have not been taught to do these things.
No, or even allowed, even dancing or twerking. Let's use twerking
Yeah.
for that can be a healing practice if you're dancing and you're moving your hips, but it's been stigmatized as
Mhm.
something that is people call it ghetto or whatever they want to label it as. When there also, I see practices, let's say in African tribes, where there's doing a very similar dance, but because it looks different, I feel it's maybe more accepted. But really, the point is it's part of our history. It's
Yeah.
existed beyond how culture has shifted and shaped it today into something else, but it is a natural rhythm, especially for women, I feel, to move your body in ways that allow you to connect with yourself, but also to release.
It's so ancestral. Yes.
I know a lot of women listening are high achievers, and with that, they can get into the to-do list mode, right? I do this as well. I'm coming out of this, practicing getting back into flow and reconnecting with more of my feminine nature after really feeling like I've been in a more masculine way of doing work in business. And feminine and masculine energy, I don't think that's gender specific. I wanna be clear about that, but I do think that there are different energies that can exist. And so, what I mean by that is really about the people listening who are feeling called to go through their healing process, but like you said, if they cry wanting to analyze why, or feeling like okay, I need to be in a routine or I need to check this off the list and looking at healing as a project rather than embodying it as a practice. What kind of advice do you have for people like that to be able to relax into the healing? Because there's a lot of discomfort that comes with the healing process. And it can be very easy to try to put the reins on it, and especially if you're someone with gifts and your gifts start coming online, spiritual psychosis is real for some people, so, yeah, how do you what would you say or what resources can people have or find to go through this and really be safe doing so?
Yeah. I always like to pull myself up to the bird's eye view and remind myself to not get so lost in the details. And this takes repetition because, again, we are reprogramming and rewriting so many decades of conditioning and generations of conditioning. Don't beat yourself up because we're going to default back to those habits naturally. And what I see most is people just beat themselves up over that. Giving yourself grace, again, that self love piece, there's not one answer for this. Grounding, following the cycles of nature, reminding yourself of your nature, not only of nature, but of your womb, the menstrual phases, following that and kind of working your life around that and honoring those phases and where you are in those different phases is very important. And as we age, those things change. We were talking about what we were talking about. It made me think of PMDD because I was just recently diagnosed with PMDD as well.
What's that for us that don't know?
That's the premenstrual depressive disorder. My mother put me on birth control, not knowing any better because I just had really heavy, painful periods. And then when I started awakening, doing this healing work and learning actually how birth control affects your channels, your natural ability, flow of energy and intuition, I started taking myself off of it. And that took years to recalibrate. And then I just started getting used to my next period, working with my own cycles and my energy phases throughout the month and working that around the work that I do and showing up
Mhm.
honored in my body in my capacity. And then I'm dealing with PMD. I've been dealing with it for the past 2.5 years, but officially got a diagnosis. And 2 weeks before my period, my hormones are going haywire. Like I'm relearning myself. I have to
Neuro
relearn my cycles. Now my menstrual cycles are not lining up with typical 4 cycles because it's a 2 week time.
That's the whole month by the time you have the experience and then you
Right.
recover from it. A lot of women experience that, and then they're trying to be high functioning, and they have all these other responsibilities, so it's like, you could easily, I feel, if you're not aware, you don't have the tools and the resources or maybe even the diagnosis, check out of your body and just live outside in your mind because it's just either too painful or too overwhelming to actually. Yeah.
Yes, that association, that masking for a lot of us neurodivergence, and we're used to doing that, but we're all hitting. We're now, and I think it's generational. We're waking to this, and we're realizing we're hitting that burnout wall, and just giving ourselves grace and showing up where we are with what we have. And then, if you're coming into this and you're an emerging healer, you're going to go through these life changes, and you have to surrender. I think surrender is the word. Pivoting, being flexible, and grace because and high achievers, high masking, high functioning, it's gonna it's gonna lead to burnout. So you just wanna be mindful. I call it I feel when I feel grippy. And so that's my term for myself of okay, I feel myself getting grippy, need to ungrip. And just getting used to that tension you're holding in your body, that self-awareness that you're holding in your body, paying attention to your body, listening to your body, and just surrendering over and over again, knowing that your ego and your mind and your conditioning is trying to have a knee-jerk reaction to protect you and be productive and achieve, and there's goals. But this is a long game. Is our journey work, our soul purpose is ever evolving. You're not just gonna stick to one thing. You're not always gonna be trying different things and it's gonna morph into other things. And so just keeping that in mind of just stay curious, stay creative, stay flexible, and stay giving yourself grace. All that.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This was packed full of wisdom, gems, if you will. So many things that I think the women listening or anyone listening really can learn about tapping into your body, getting in tune with who you are. That is, I feel, the key and the foundation for everything is just listening to yourself and taking it step by step. So, how can anyone who's interested in working with you, how can they connect with you? Where can they find you?
Okay, so yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I just got it on Substack and I wrote one post, but on all of those. My link in bio is on all of those. I offer private one-on-one sessions. I have a class that I offer twice a week called Path to Purpose Night School. I offer that at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's the same class, just pick your day. And I pick those times to meet you where you are. So that is inspired by my full 12-week course, which is a healer initiation training and certification course that I call Awaken and Activate Your True Heart's Nature. But again, I can meet you where you are. And I'm on Instagram as namuli.reborn and on TikTok, namuli.reborn. And I offer a lot of wisdom also on those pages too.
Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your light with us. I appreciate you. And for everyone listening, thank you for being here, and we'll see you all soon. Bye bye.